Hello and welcome to the Film Ireland podcast, where we celebrate filmmaking, storytelling and cinema across the island of Ireland. So whether you're a diehard film fan or simply curious about the screen industries, make sure to subscribe so you can catch up on past conversations with creatives like Nora Toomey and Thaddeus O'Sullivan. So in today's episode, we're really delighted to welcome producer Laura McNicholas to chat about her coming-of-age feature, Spilt Milk, which is in cinemas on the 20th of March. Today's podcast has been made possible with the support of Fish Aaron, Screen Ireland and their Stakeholders Fund. And Spilt Milk follows 28-year-old Bobby, a boy who dreams of becoming a great detective like his TV hero Kojak, and he sets up his own PI firm with his best friend Nell, and the pair embark on their first quest to find his older brother Oisín. So have a listen to the trailer here.
Have you heard of True North? It's a fixed spot on the map, unchangeable. People have that too. Your daddy's hard working, your mammy's brave.
Have a game with us?
Yeah, come on, Bobby.
Can't. Got cases to solve.
What looks ordinary to us, you see something else.
We're the detectives around here. Says who? Me. Who's that?
That's Jim Kane, one of the worst guys in Dublin. He's the real reason half of me mates are gone. Jesus, man, you're on me back every day.
Don't you dare curse at your mother.
Do you want to have her now?
Full fucking...
There's a lot of people getting robbed around here.
I know you miss him. Once he's sorted everything out, he'll be home.
Imagine, front page of the Herald. You, me and Oisín. The disappearance solved.
Is this your daughter?
Get inside the paria. We are staying here till we figure out what to do with the parias.
He needs me to find him.
You don't need to explain yourself to a child.
Not true. You only care about yourself and what's good for you.
This isn't Kojak, Bobby.
Do you really think they want you back?
Paddy's a liar, Bobby. He's dangerous. And me?
You see the good in things. That's your true north.
So thank you so much for chatting with us.
Hi, nice to talk. How are you?
Oh, we're delighted. We're delighted to have you here. Your fabulous feature film is about to launch in
2 days.
yeah, oh my God. Well, it'll be the time. It'll be today when
Yes.
people hear. But it had a really, really successful festival run. It screened at so many festivals. It won so many awards. I was just wondering first, if you can maybe tell me a little bit about what that journey is like from the perspective of a producer.
Absolutely. So I think the main thing I would say with Spilt Milk, and I think for every feature, and, particularly from my experience, that is like, we shot the film over 2 years ago, but I'm still producing it, So, it's the development, the financing, the shoot, post, exhibit, festival, exhibition. It's a long process. And for us with festivals, we were in the middle of, I don't think we were very close to picture lock, but we hadn't done any of the rest of the post. And we got offered Tallinn, which is a really cool festival in Estonia. And I think there was a connection there because when we had been in really late stage development, we'd been invited to do a co-pro pitch with them. So this was kind of winter 2020, so obviously online, but they were aware of the project at that point. And then even in 2021, we had been selected by them to do a kind of platform that they do at Cannes. So they'll do a bit of press around a couple of projects, and all press is good, So they were aware of the project and they were tracking it. So when we had a rough cut, they wanted to watch it and they offered us the world premiere there. So it was kind of a lot sooner than expected. And we had our world premiere with them in November. And then we had finished post at that point, but we still had to deliver to the funders and stuff. So that wasn't really until early spring 2025. So yeah, and then because we had Tallinn, it made a lot of the other conversations easier because the other programmers were excited to hear that it had its world premiere there, and it's one of these 15, I think, A-list festivals in the world. So Tallinn is the city itself in Estonia is really cool. So it's a lovely place to go and quite small. So the festival really looks after you, makes a fuss of you and everything. And So it was great. It was a great platform. And then then we had Dublin and we had our Irish premiere, and then quickly after that we had our UK premiere in Glasgow, and we won the MUBI Audience Award in Glasgow, which was, again, that was a really big moment for us. And there was a lot of press out of there. It was like a headline in relation to the Glasgow Film Festival in Hollywood Reporter, in Deadline, in Screen Daily. So that's really cool. That's really good for your project. And on the back of, after Tallinn, we got our first review in Screen International. So we hired a publicist to kind of help with press around the world premiere, which Screen Ireland are brilliant. Obviously, we developed the film with Screen Ireland and they're the major funder. But they also have a publicity fund that you can get if you have your world premiere in particular festivals. So that enabled me to hire a publicist and do press screenings for the trades. So that was really important. And like, that's the main quote from that is on our poster. So, and as soon as we read that quote, it was like, well, that's the poster sorted. And so all those things kind of building momentum, and then I think, like, I didn't really, if I'm honest, submit to a lot of places, it was a lot of invites and people saw it somewhere else and can you send me a screener? So we did Dublin, and then Croatia came. We had our Croatian premiere at a really cool festival in Split, and we also have Croatian distribution. And he had seen it, the distributor there, Alan, had seen it in Tallinn. And then we had Munich, and Gráinne Humphreys from Diff actually was a huge supporter of the film, and she really spoke well of it and like introduced it to other programmers that she knew. So, because of course, like all the programmers, like they generally know each other, the way. So if they like something, they're really happy to talk about that, which is great. And we also, because we were a UK-Irish co-production before we premiered in Tallinn, it was October 2024, I suppose, the London Film Festival does a works in progress. So you can go and show a clip of your film and introduce it. And then there was a day of meetings. So we met a lot of programmers there also that kind of came back and wanted the film then after that. And we were probably later in the day in terms of the film. It already had a world premiere locked in, but a lot of the other projects were maybe still financing or had literally just shot. So, but that was also a brilliant opportunity just to, meet programmers face to face, talk about your project. And of course, if it's not for them, if that film isn't for them, they want to know what you're doing next. And, then when you're contacting them again about your next film, they know who you are and they know you've had a film made and you've kind of done that, So all those, like, obviously, the industry is built around festivals, so it's like all the co-pro markets, all the opportunities for press, like it's really important, the way, and it just raises the profile of your project, which is what it's all about. So yeah, we've had a very long festival run, and Brian, the director, was actually in Berlin at the weekend for another festival, and with the Irish Film Festival in Berlin. And so we're still getting a few invites, and our American premiere actually at the Chicago International Film Festival, they actually just again emailed us, had heard about the film, could they watch it, and they did. So like word of mouth, so yeah, so we're very lucky. It was really gratifying. We're obviously have our distribution in Ireland and the UK and Croatia, and actually today got an offer for distribution in Poland. So and we have another distributor in Australia and New Zealand who's nearly confirmed, but we don't have a sales agent, so I've had to do those deals directly, and that has been for me a huge learning curve, and not that not an experience I would have chosen, but I've learned a lot. And I think, to be honest, we've got as many territories we've done, for a debut feature, it's gotten a few international territories, which is really good, and a high profile Irish release, which we're very excited about. And working with Beach Pictures is amazing. Dave Reed, very passionate and very so experienced. So been great to learn from him as well. So yeah, but not having a sales agent just meant there was an extra level of work that I had to do. So yeah, and that wasn't by choice. It was they kind of felt the audience was a kid's film, but the film was too dark. Whereas we've always felt that it was a film for teenagers and adults, And
I would wholeheartedly agree
Thank
that if you think of some of the films and content that we would have watched when we were younger, even cartoons aimed at children, there were so many that dealt with death or these complex issues. But the thing about art is that it gives it to you in a safe space so that you can process it. So I would be vehemently pro, I say infantilizing children, but like you don't, they're clever, they're smart, they want to learn about these things. These are things that like they're going to learn about. And I think this is a film that does that. But I mean, it isn't as well the bleakest thing. But first, before we'll have played a little trailer before this, but I would love if you sort of like gave a description of the project first, to give a little bit of context for anyone who's maybe planning to see it.
So Spilt Milk is a feature film. It's like an Irish Billy Elliot, set in Dublin in 1984. So we go on a journey with 11-year-old Bobby O'Brien, who lives in the flats with his best friend Nell. And Bobby wants to be a detective when he grows up, and his idol is Kojak. But suddenly he finds that that there's a mystery, and his older brother has disappeared. So it's kind of that moment, it's a loss of innocence story. So he goes on a journey to find his brother, and on the way encounters, has his eyes opened a little bit more to the world around him. But it deals with quite a tough subject matter, but there's a warm, gritty underlying tone to the film. So there's a lot of humor. I think it's a real testament to Dublin as a city. It's nearly another character. I think it's a tribute to mums and what mums do and how they feel. And I think for me, when I first read the script, and Cara Loftus wrote the script, and she's so talented, the thing that I connected with immediately was the mother character in it, and just that feeling of you can't protect your children, and you can't protect your children from everything. So how do you deal with that? And I think we see the character of Maura go experience that journey, and Danielle Gallagher's performance is amazing in it. So that's a little bit about it. Yeah.
I think you've done such a good job as a team putting together such a brilliant young cast, and presenting it in a way that it's engaging, and that element of mystery. But I was wondering if we could sort of even go back to the beginning of the process of the film. So your first time reading the script and coming on board as producer, what was that like?
My experience prior to that, I had worked with Samson Films as production exec, and I had also worked a little bit on the distribution side, shooting press junkets and EPKs and digital content. And I had produced a lot of short films at Screen Ireland, which was great, and film based back in the day. And so I was looking to build my own slate. And so Screen Ireland would run these networking opportunities. Cara had done their first new writer scheme, I think it was called Spotlight, but it was the first iteration of that. And so I was invited to go along for that, and you get like a synopsis of, maybe there was 10 projects, I think. So synopsis, and I just really liked the synopsis, and I think, fundamentally, your synopsis is the film, and it doesn't really change, kind of thing. So I met Cara at that event, read the draft, and she had a first draft at that point, and we decided to work together and submitted then for development funding with Screen Ireland, and we got that project development in January, I think, 2020. Yes, I remember we had an in-person meeting with Screen Ireland before COVID, and little did we know. And then we spent, I suppose, the next year and a half developing it. Brian, that came on to direct it. I worked with Brian on other things and knew him, and just felt and instinctively that he was the right person to direct the film. And Brian's very collaborative, as is Cara, so it was a really nice experience between the three of us. So we got production funding from Screen Ireland.
Before we even go ahead, because I think this is a very interesting piece to be in. So you had seen the synopsis, and the film now is still a version of that. That development scheme that Cara had been on, that Screen Ireland instrumented that meeting, that was like a first draft development scheme that they'd fund Cara and work with a script editor to get it to that first draft stage. And when you come out, and actually this sort of comes back into, okay, so you started as an actor and from the world of theatre before all of this, like a good time before the shorts.
A long time ago. Yeah. I think like a lot of people, you look at films or TV and you see the actors and you don't actually realize what's behind it. And I didn't go to film school. I did English and history in UCD, and exactly started producing fringe theatre. And so yeah, like creative producer is where I've ended up, and I think it's suits me 100%.
And it seems like a very organic route to get there. But the reason I'm sort of, kind of bringing this up, because there's a very specific type of storytelling that's very much so character driven. And, if you're coming from the perspective of a performer as well, you need to understand, who are these people and what are they doing, as opposed to, the outside view looking in, where it's like plot, or, like, how do you sell this? And I'm just wondering if at this stage, as you're kind of picking up this script, and even with what you've chosen to produce before this and the stories that you were drawn to, as a creative producer, just tell me a little bit about what it is in stories at that point that attracts you. And then if we can go into the development phase in a little bit more detail after.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's really interesting. Yeah, I think 100% that's totally informed everything I've done. It's the characters, the way and the journeys that they go on. And I've learned along the way, I've done my courses with John York, which are amazing to learn about structure, and wow, that's why that happens. And but instinctively, yeah, it's always the characters, and I think on reading Cara's work, I felt like I knew who Maura was. And my son at the top, at first was 2, I think, when we started developing it. And I also really felt an affinity, to him. And it was just, yeah, I just really liked all the characters. And I think for me, as an audience member, like, that's what you respond to. And, we don't, obviously, when we watch a film, we know when the cinematography is good. We know when the editing is good. We know, all those things, but you're not aware of them, at the same time, So it's like the magic. It is the magic of movie making. But and obviously, all those are art forms in themselves and are phenomenal. But yeah, the first point of contact for anyone watching anything is the character, and just having that clarity with characters. And I think even then in casting, Danielle had been in a short that 9 to 5 had produced, and Rena Grigor had directed it a few years ago. So I knew Danielle, and we were doing a read through on Zoom, and I asked her to come on and just help us out. And to be honest, at that point, we weren't really thinking of her for that role, but when she did the reading, and obviously there was a lot of other actors on the Zoom, we all kind of felt, oh God, she'd be amazing in the role, So yeah, so it just, sometimes you're just lucky, you know the right person. And but yeah, I think for me, in looking for projects, in reading projects, it is about character. And I do kind of, I suppose, choose domestic settings because I'm interested in that, and I also feel like I really like political and historical content, stuff that's hard to get financed, unfortunately. But when it's good, and then so I think it's mixing all those things up together is what really. And in Spilt Milk, we have all those things. We have social history, we have a family drama, we have humor, we have sorrow, and like that's what you want. You want the full experience.
Yeah. And in terms of as well, when you're creative producing and you've a slate of shorts before this, was this your first time getting to, like, obviously to this stage of development, but like working in that longer form content? Did you?
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned I had worked in Samson as a production exec, but I was around development, but it wasn't my job, But I would have picked up we would have talked a lot about the slate. So, you're learning, but it wasn't my job. But in hindsight, I did a degree in English literature. The way it should have, if I'd known what to do, the way that's what I would have gone into, and but I like both sides. I like obviously the creative. I enjoy the legal business side of things as well. So I think to be a creative producer, you do have to do both. I didn't work on crews. I haven't come up that way. So it's a different experience. And obviously you need to understand everything. But I remember my exec producer in Spilt Milk kind of saying, once you have the best crew in place, then that's their job. They're brilliant. So they know a lot of that stuff more than I would, so and that's how it goes, because it's such an army that makes a film, and we had wonderful crew, we had wonderful HODs. So yeah, it was a great team. Yeah.
So you are on board now. It's, you're applying for production funding for that next round of production funding. As a kind of creative producer, are you, and who has worked in that development sphere, are you being collaborative on the script? Are you trying to rework elements of it?
Yeah, I think I feed in a lot more on script than other producers do, and that's not going to be for every writer or every director, and that's totally fine. And again, it's like anything, when you find someone that you collaborate well with, that's a really important thing. Myself and Brian have another feature that's gone in for financing. It is financing, called The Mount, which is a Halloween comedy, and it's actually a different writer this time, Fiona Toohey. So it's hilarious. And again, actually, Fiona had done Spotlight with Screen Ireland, and that's how I discovered the project. So yeah, and again, Fiona's very collaborative, and she worked in production with a production company in London in finance. So actually knows the industry, but on both sides, which is interesting. So yeah, so that project has been in development, I think, for about 2.5 years. But obviously we've all been busy doing other things, and you kind of come to it. But that's been a really great process. It's a really exciting project. It's very commercial. We have distribution attached already, and we're out to some American financiers as well at the moment. So fingers crossed, we're shooting that at the end of this year. Yeah.
And as someone, again, who like that will work with a lot of different creatives across shorts and across now feature length, and probably, for everyone that gets across the line in terms of development, there's obviously like a drawer and a hard drive full of projects that have, almost been there, or on hiatus for a beat. Talk to me as well about, like you mentioned that collaboration, like a project is always elevated by the more voices when they are in sync, how people work together. What is it that you're looking to achieve? What is the process like of working with writers and able to get them to elevate the script so to go for production funding?
I think, and probably some people won't want to hear this, the way I think when you're writing a script, and it depends if you're writing it, if it's a really personal experience, the way, that's a particular type of script. But if you're writing it because you think this is a good story, I think audiences like this, I think this will get made, I think it's something that's important to take on board, like who's the audience, and it's a very expensive art form if you're just making it for yourself. So for me, and some people might disagree with me, but it is, and be really open to collaboration, and just thinking about who the audience is, what festivals I think this will premiere at, and because again, it's like they've different identities nearly, the way. So if you can't really go, oh, this would suit, so obviously they're all equally amazing festivals. This is a Sundance film, or this is a Berlin film. They're very different types of films. So I think you need to know where its destination is. And I think for me as a producer, and especially now on my second feature, and, obviously I have other ones at earlier stages, again, it's about building on what I've done with Spilt Milk, and having it be, I suppose, we've had 5 or 6 territories with Spilt Milk. I want the next one to be released everywhere, so 105 countries. So, that's kind of what my goal is. And I think, I'm also developing TV projects, and again, as you mentioned, I've gotten close on 1 or 2. And again, yeah, and it's timing, the way with TV, I think. And like everything, it's track record, so it's balancing all that. But I think you do, and I have found in terms of dealing with executives on the TV side, like it's a different delivery system. So again, it's all about audience.
And in terms then of sort of pitfalls, or is there any advice as someone who's, you'd be dealing with more creatives from that business side, is there any sort of pitfalls you could advise people to avoid? Because, you've also been a judge on projects, especially at that development stage.
I think it's making sure you're making the same, in terms of film, the same film, I think if you're having a conversation with people and they haven't decided on certain things like who's the cast, because these are references and they're benchmarks. And sometimes it might be just to give a sense of who you see, but that's key. It's key, because if you're not in sync, that's really obvious. And that will be a problem in prep. That will be a problem in shooting, and that will be a problem in post. And then it will be picked up in the reviews. I think that it's like the things that are an issue in development are generally still an issue 2 years later. So just you do have to be in sync. And that's what I think is the most important thing. Yeah. And just listen to each other. Yeah.
Because it is a marriage. Like there's so much work that involves in getting it. And in terms of, that everyone has to understand and have generosity, because that's how it will evolve and become greater than the sum of its parts as well, when you have all those different voices in the room, but they're working together to be constructive rather than destructive.
Exactly. And I love learning from people, so it's like we had Kyle Waters as our DOP on Spilt Milk, and I had worked on, when I was in Samson, he had been the DOP on A Dark Song, which was the first feature film that I had anything to do with. And that was a great experience. And I remember thinking, God, when I get to the point where I'm making my first feature, I really want him to be the cinematographer. And thankfully he was available and said yes. It's a different, everyone's bringing their best to the table, and that's what you want as a creative producer and as a director. I think that's what you want. Yeah.
Okay, so, and we'll go now to the development stage. So you've worked with Cara and workshopped the script to be elevated, put in for the next round of development funding, and got it. And now, what was the journey like raising the funds?
Yes, so it took a while. Screen Ireland came on relatively quickly with production support, and then you obviously have to get the rest of the finance in. So again, as I mentioned, we didn't have a sales agent, and I think it was literally in the middle of COVID. So cinemas were making a film, and cinemas were closed, and it was so, like, I think MG's advances kind of, which previously had been kind of a given, not easy, but kind of par for the course, weren't really happening. And it soon became apparent we weren't going to get one. So we brought in a UK co-producer, which is a great producer called James Heath, who I had met when I did the producers lab in Rotterdam, and we'd stayed in touch. And at the time, James was he was working in Glasgow, and he's still in Scotland. And the company that he was running, there was like a few arms, so there was a commercials arm that was really well established, and they were setting up a boutique post house. So they came in, and so the plan was to do the post with them. So there was an equity investment, and then obviously doing the work in the UK, we could access some UK tax credit along with the Irish tax credit. And then also, but the key thing really was for us was Commission a Man. And the wonderful thing with Commission a Man funding is that you can spend it in any territory. So we were able to spend it in the UK, which just elevated our budget. And, obviously then we were able to access a little bit more UK tax credit. So we had to wait until we got that. So that took, everything is very competitive, but there was a sense, I think, that, I knew they liked the project. So we had to go in, I think, twice until we got the funding. So that was the thing that we were the key detail that we were waiting for. But it never felt like it wasn't going to happen. There was definitely a lot of love for the project. And I think, I've got the sense, it was Screen Ireland felt it was going to be my debut feature, and the same for Brian, had done a lot of short films and was a really experienced commercials director, and they really liked the script. So I think I never doubted it would get made, and sometimes looking back, you go, oh God, it was good. I felt like that. But yeah, I think when you believe in something, you believe in something, Yeah,
wonderful. So then, raising that's kind of time consuming. And I would say this, when did you have cast attached? Were there any kind of changes that happened? Because, a lot changed in the world. I think there is the element where it is a retrospective film. So the world of the film didn't change, it's not like, the kids are communicating with a different app. You're like, it is set in that one specific time period. But, are things evolving? Did anything have to shift in terms of, cast or crew or expectations?
So yeah, in terms of the world, that was obviously set in stone. Danielle and also Lawrence O'Furon, who plays the father John, they were both attached maybe a year before we shot, and they were just. I suppose Danielle knew about the project because we'd done the read through, so she became attached quite quickly. And then Lawrence, they have the same agent, so his agent knew about the project. And Lawrence is amazing in the role, and a really different type of father figure that we see on screen, and like so much vulnerability and really beautiful performance. And like that goes for everyone in the film, you know. But yeah, his performance is amazing. So Owen O'Sullivan came on. We did have someone attached, I won't say their name, to play Nisha, to play Nell. And we did actually do a press release around it. And then they weren't available because of the actor strikes. So we pushed the shoot a little bit and to try and think, okay, well, the strikes will probably be over, you know. And then it just came to it, and it was like, they haven't ended, and who knows when they're going to end. And when, you know, we had all the finance in place, and we were closing, so you can't really delay closing, you know, forever, you know. And so unfortunately we recast. But you know, I mean, I think then Nisha is we were very lucky, you know, that, you know, Nisha came in, and I think is wonderful, and like has so much personality and so much like star power, and is so funny. And so sometimes things, you know, work out. And you know, I suppose every project there's so much talent, you know, the way it could be, the roles could be seen in a different light, but like Nisha is phenomenal. So yeah, the actors strike, that was a challenge, and for many, and obviously not just for us, but we were like Nisha, we were blessed to have her, and we were really lucky that Anya O'Sullivan, our casting director, who again is brilliant, knew her and had suggested her from very early on. So we were lucky. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. And there is, I just, those young leads, they're just incredible. Oh my God, what stars.
So yeah, no, what stars. And yeah, like, and Killian obviously then went on to work with Richard Linklater and Ethan Hawke, as you do. And yeah, and just, yeah, they're both great kids. And they're both, you know, obviously, because they traveled to a lot of the festivals, and their mum or their dad came with them. And so we got to know them and their families really well. And they're both really cool kids, and they're both in school now. So yeah, I'm checking in with their parents. I'm like, how do they feel about being in the Golden Posters? You know, so I think they're just taking it in their stride. Yeah,
that's really wonderful. And in terms then of, you know, getting into production, was there, you know, like getting that across the line and going into the edit? So, I mean, again, you'd such kind of strong experience, number one, with story and understanding story instinctively, and then, you know, two, from shorts.
yeah.
Like, is there anything different? Is a feature like a big short from the perspective of a producer in terms of, you know, like, or, you know, are there moments where you're like, oh God, that rough cut is very rough? What would have been that shift that you noticed kind of going through that process at that point?
I think it's just the length. Like, to be honest, it is just the length of the shoot. You know, the way, like, you're kind of doing the same blocks of thinking and experience, and obviously there's a lot more legal and financial responsibilities, and
with kids, yeah, as well.
With each film, and with kids, and with period, and yeah. There was definitely a lot of stressful situation, but you know, I think it's always like that, you know. And I think every film, every project, you'll go, what's the really hard thing here? You know, what's going to be the biggest challenge? And I think in hindsight with Spilt Milk, it was the period and having two children in the lead, you know, and there was no way around that. And I probably, if I'm honest, when I first read the script, didn't understand, you know, how challenging that's going to be, you know. But again, I think that's every project. I think there's something it's filmmaking is never easy, you know, so it's just going in with a plan. So, you know, we had the plan and we knew what we needed to do. We had a wonderful production designer, and Shane McEnroe, and again, like, such an amazing talent and lovely man. And so, yeah, and we just built the infrastructure around so that the kids had a green room so that they could have a break. And I think they enjoyed the shoot, you know, and we had body doubles coming in for them as well, so that, you know, their time on camera was, you know, when we were rolling. So yeah, you have to really take all that stuff on board. And there was a great Mike Donnelly was the production manager, and Niamh Gale was the line producer. So, you know, they're both really experienced. So I was lucky enough to be able to have them they were managing the shoot with me and just to talk through everything. So everything was, the plan worked, you know. It's the same. Like I personally, my career started working with Milane. So post-production has always been an environment that I really enjoy. And I kind of feel like that's in many ways where you know, so much is still happening during post-production because you've got the cut, and we had a Scottish editor called Colin Money who is brilliant and very experienced, and Brian, and really enjoyed working with him. And then you know, obviously I would pop in every so often, and but yeah, he was cool and he just totally got the film.
And that's interesting because it does go to sort of like workflow in terms of you as creative producer, you know, like in terms of first working with Cara up until the shoot, are there any changes or tweaks that, you know, you're bringing her on? Was she on set? Or what, like was she?
Yeah. So we kind of had to, because of budget constraints, we kind of had to change some stuff in the script, which I don't think we ever sacrificed story, but you kind of have to go, well, how can we tell this part of the story in a way that works with the budget that we have, you know? So I think probably the last month or two before shooting, there was a lot of conversation around that. But again, I don't think it was anything that was like a sacrifice creatively. It was just about how do we get the story across, you know? And so Cara was obviously involved with all that, and she was on set. She wasn't there all the time, but she would come in when she could, you know. And then obviously our post was in Glasgow, so Brian was in Glasgow and I was going back and forth, and that was great.
So do you keep your eyes fresh then? Like, you know, like coming from that background, you really understand the idea of it, or are you kind of getting cuts consistently?
I'm getting cuts consistently, you know. So I'd be getting notes. I'd be giving notes all the time. And generally my notes would be well received. I don't think I was there too much or anything like that. But yeah, you know, obviously I want to leave the director and the editor to it, you know, but I'd be up like getting cuts every week and kind of feeding in, and which is great. And then so it was kind of the similar, and myself and Brian have a good working relationship, you know. So with the grade, I'd kind of leave him to it, you know, we talk about it, and then I'd come in after a week and look at it and give notes, and then maybe come back in again and go, you know, I'd be over in Scotland for maybe 2 or 3 days at a time kind of thing. And the same with the sound design. So we were both there. And, you know, Brian was able to do some remotely as well, you know. We were there for the spotting session for sound, with the composer, with the grade, and then, you know, so you kind of have the initial conversation, and then the person's doing their job, you know. So and Brian would be there with them, and then I'd come in and give notes, and then so that was kind of it. So it was kind of like, obviously Brian's the director, you know, and I give my thoughts, and people generally like what I say. Yeah, generally.
Then in terms as well of managing notes, if, you know, like there's a different space of financiers and they have their own thoughts, how would you like negotiate that then, you know, like kind of like bring them through to Brian, and, you know, like once it's gotten to that edit stage?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose with your financiers, you know, you have particular points where you're delivering your rough cut, you know, so they're not getting it constantly, you know. So when you give it to them, it's something that you can stand over and something that you're happy with, you know. And so we certainly got notes, but they were always positive and they were always helpful. And I think, you know, with Spilt Milk, the edit was quite, you know, we were happy. It wasn't, we weren't sitting there going, this isn't working, you know, the way kind of thing. I remember doing a screening in a cinema in Glasgow about 3 weeks into the edit, and the editor really liked to do it in a cinema so that you get the full experience. And I remember like being really moved and going, and, you know, obviously there was still a lot of work to do and a lot of detail, but, you know, the story was there and the film was there, and I felt like we'd made the film that we wanted to make. And I think to feel that at that point is probably quite unusual, you know. So, and there was still a lot of work to do, but it was all working, you know. And I know that's not always the case. So
okay, so this kind of almost brings us back up to, you know, Talon and getting ready for that. But like now looking back, that like even to that point was just like a mountain of work, and you're still kind of not at the other side now where we are, but you know, you can kind of see the end point. I presume is there anything at this point looking back you're like, oh my God, I really learned from that, or I did not expect it to be like that, you know, aside from the, you know, like logistically these elements were harder? Was there, you know, anything else that kind of changed?
Yeah. How I would make my next film. Yeah, like I like this, not having a sales agent was an extra layer of work, and obviously I'm not an expert at that, you know, so that was quite frustrating, if I'm honest, you know. And but I'm really proud of the film that we made, and it's, you know, it was kind of, it's played in about over 20 festivals, won lots of awards, been nominated for lots of IFTAs, and so you know, that's, you know, that's, it's not that, I think, you know, like it's certainly not the only time that happens, you know. So but yeah, certainly on my next project, that won't happen. Yeah.
But I mean, I suppose even doing that element of work, you'll like, does that give you that deeper understanding of what that process
Oh,
is
for
that can
sure.
help feed into the
Yeah.
sales bit of it?
Yeah.
So now you're starting to go through your festival runs. It's building up momentum in terms of audiences, and you know, I mean, getting there, and like, and I think the thing, what it really seems to have done is connect with audiences worldwide. There's something in this story that, you know, like, yeah, whether you're from Poland or whether you're from America, you do seem, there's a kind
Yeah.
of shared human experience, you know, the complexities of family, that coming of age thing, that does ring particularly true. As you're watching it with audiences, does that change how you see it in a little way? And is, you know, watching it with two, like, I mean, you've been also in this industry for such a, like, long, you're very youthful and beautiful, but you've been in it for like a long time, you know,
Thank you.
like watching it alongside these two complete newcomers who are fresh to
Yeah.
the industry and what it means. Does that change it as well?
Yeah, I think we all felt, myself and Brian are both parents, and we felt very protective of Killian and Misha, and, you know, wanting them to have a really good experience. And as I mentioned, you know, got to know their parents and stuff. And I think they've been very happy with the whole experience as well. Yeah, you just, I suppose we know how hard it is, you know, the way, and how negative it can be. And you just want to build a kind of bubble where that's, that, you know, that they don't have to experience that. For me, like, filmmaking is really hard, you know, the way, and, you know, your life is kind of built differently to other people's. But I think that's true of anyone who does a job that they love, you know. I think if you're like the travel, and, you know, I enjoy the travel, but I don't have to travel all the time, you know, but it's really nice. So, you know, I have to go to Berlin for a market, you know,
No.
you know, I have to go to Dinard, you know, it's really nice, you know. And so yeah, but then there are, you know, the lack of structure is, you know, that's different, you know, the way as well. So so there's always going to be I suppose some sacrifice. But like I say, I think that's true of every job. It's just different, you know. If you're a sports coach and you have to travel, you know, the way, or if you're a lawyer and you're working 20 hours a day every week, you know, kind of thing. So, you know, and I do love filmmaking, but I do also feel like at this point it's a career, you know. And I think when you start, it's a vocation, you know, and I think you probably wouldn't stay doing it if you didn't have that love for it, you know. But yeah, I have to say, considering the film is in cinemas today, it's a thrill, you know, the way to see, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, all these other people are going to see this film that we've made and talked about for so long and have their own experience with it. And I think that's amazing. And I remember watching an episode of The Studio, that comedy on Apple. I think the character says to Seth Rogen, it's like, and it's all about the crazy industry, and, you know, and it's like, which is like, if you make something good, it's good forever. And I think that's the truth, you know.
Yeah.
That's the truth, you know. So yeah.
And you do say it isn't a vocation, but there are lots of like careers that are much, 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 much easier. There is something broad, and they do talk about that specifically in The Studio so well, where, you know, like, he's like, you're not a doctor, you're not saving lives, but you're like, but it's so important.
Exactly. Because it's even like, you know, with theatrical is challenging and everyone's on social media. It's like, no one is going to look, no offense, no one's going to look at a Mr. Beast video in, like, you know, 20 years and go, that really meant something to me, you know. Whereas, and, you know,
Unless it's a tell-all documentary and it's like, we didn't know at the time.
how much money you made, and good for you. That's entertainment, but it's not film, it's not storytelling. And I think an interesting thing is, we're reading about YouTubers who are making features. We're not, it's not really going the other way, and I think, distribution and the model is evolving. And 120 years ago, there was no such thing as cinema. So, that's quite natural that things are going to keep evolving and we just have to figure it out. But yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, it is that feeling of making something that people connect with. And, you mentioned films that we talked about that, we would have watched as teenagers or young teenagers or kids that had a serious undertone. And like, Stand By Me was always a film we talked about. And when I think about that film, I think about the friendship. I don't really think about the fact that they're going to find a dead body, kind of thing. So, and I think that's what people really connect with, and that's what stays with people. And I think in Spilt Milk, people will, they'll see the family drama and they'll see the friendship of Bobby and Nell and Killian and Nisha's performances and just remember that, and that's what we want.
And like you're almost at the other side. You've probably like a mountain of press conversations that we've just nabbed at you at the beginning of. But in terms then of, like looking back over this journey, like, like this has been 6 years now. You've been, sitting with the story, you've been pushing, you've been getting it across the line, and now finally people are, going to watch it. What were the bits that were the wins for you? Like, was it, that moment sitting, watching the film on screen, like, was it being on set and watching the performances first? Like, what were those kind of like key moments? And I think it's partly we do have to hold on to them because, there's a lot of rejection, like that hard drive full of projects that we all have that we're, really want to get across the line, but for whatever reason, they don't quite there. Like what were those kind of moments that you just, felt the well of love?
I think I mentioned it there when we had that screening in Glasgow about 3 weeks into the edit, because I think when you're shooting, it's nonstop, the way. So that was the moment for me where I was able to go, okay, wow, we've done, we're not there, we're not finished, but we have achieved something really special here. And I remember talking to like the other producers and Brian and, that day, and we were all really excited and that was really special. And then I think I have to say getting nominated for the IFTAs, because we hadn't screened in Ireland yet. We hadn't had our Irish premiere, and we were nominated in January. And I had submitted thinking we might get one or two, which could help a little bit, the way. And then we were nominated for Best Film and Best Director and Best Script and Best Costume Design. And we were completely, I'm not saying, I didn't expect it. Like, we really didn't expect it. And I remember my friend texting me and she was like, you've been nominated in all these categories. And that was like, yeah, like we were on cloud nine for weeks. And, when people go, oh, we didn't win, or, we didn't really expect to win, and obviously would have been nice to win. But, it was a big year, kneecap and small things like these. So they were two juggernauts, and so for us to be there, in particular because we hadn't had our Irish premiere, was very special. Yeah.
And now in terms of, someone who's sitting down to watch the film, what do you hope they get from it? Those stories, the feeling of community, what would you like them to leave the screening with?
I want people to watch it, and I want them to remember that when things are hard, that things can change, and just you can find solace and strength with your friends and with your family. And I think it's also, that warmth and the grittiness of it, I think they go hand in hand in life. And I think it's okay I think it's good when you accept that. Like, nothing is ever super amazing, or, kind of, it's the ups and downs, and, and I think once you kind of see the beauty in that, then the good things are even more special.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much for chatting with us. Congratulations.
Really lovely to chat with you, Gemma, again, and I'll hopefully see you soon.
And thank you so much for listening. So make sure to subscribe to Film Ireland wherever you get your podcasts.